Welcome back to the Mind Hiking Podcast, and if you're a new listener, thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Brody Frye, and as of this recording, happy Cinco de Mayo. But as of you listening, I hope you had a great weekend. Today's episode I've been looking forward to for a while. I feel like it's going to fill in some good gaps in previous episodes, some previous questions, and things that we've talked about before. We're bringing somebody on that has a lot of insight on things that I've discussed here before. So it's going to be a real fun father-son episode. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, it's Brody Frye, and here we dive deep into difficult questions. We'll map out thoughts, theories, and crazy ideas for the love of knowledge and growth. So, how do we answer some of the mind's toughest questions? This is the Mind Hiking Podcast. Okay, your mic is hot, Dad. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. Happy Cinco de Drinko.
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers. You got your Bud or Miller Lite. Miller Lite.
Yeah, I don't drink Bud Light.
Yeah. I got a spiked Simply lemonade. It's a blueberry flavor. It's kind of fruity tonight, so my apologies. But welcome to the Mind Hiking Podcast. This is one I've been looking forward to for a while. So, Mr. Vegas, you just got back.
Yeah. Thank you. First, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah.
And Vegas was awesome again.
Yeah. So, pool, obviously, for people who don't know, but how did you get back? Because you played pool when you were younger, and then you kind of got back into it, and now you're kicking ass. So, tell me how that happened.
Well, I used to play, there's a little bar down the street from my house. I used to play darts and pool at. I was better at pool than darts, so I pretty much stuck with that.
Yeah.
And then when you were born, I quit.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was like 20 years I never touched a cue stick. And then when I got, when the divorce happened,
Yeah.
one night I went back down there and just picked up a stick and was just hitting balls around, and there was a guy that came in and it came right back to me, and I beat up on him pretty bad. And he brought one of his buddies in a few days later, and he's like, "Yeah, this is the guy I was telling you about. He kicked my ass all night long."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, you want to get on a team?" I'm like, "Hey, I'm single now. Well, why not go out and meet some new people and
kill some time?"
Yeah. So I got a funny story to tell you quick, though.
Yeah.
So I got on this team, and my first session we were there, we made it to the playoffs, and it's a 3-day playoff. We won the playoffs and won the trip to Vegas. That was the first time I went, like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And I was like on fire that weekend in the playoffs, and there was this older gentleman, I'm guessing probably mid-70s, and he was watching me play. A lot of teams stick around and watch the final match. And he's like, "Hey, you're pretty good, guy." And I'm like, he's like, "How long you been trying to get to Vegas?" I'm like, "This is my first session on this team." And he looks at me dead serious. He's like, "You son of a bitch." I'm like, "What did I do?" Yeah. He's like, "I've been trying for 16 years to get to Vegas, and you got there in like literally 3 months of playing with this team." I'm like, and so again, I'm looking at him like, what do I say? I'm sorry. Right?
That's awesome.
So then I made it back with my friend Chris Page in 9-ball doubles in May.
Yep.
And then I just got back with my friend Dave Talkin in 8-ball doubles. And I won a couple of side tournaments out there too. So
that's so cool. So you've been there for 8-ball twice, 9-ball once?
Correct.
That's awesome. What were the side tournaments?
They call it Mini Mania.
Okay.
There's like 16 players. Mm-hmm. It's only $20 to buy in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't pay a lot, but it's something to do in between matches.
Yeah.
That's cool. And so I won one and got second and two.
That's awesome.
So,
Now you do some work for the APA, don't you?
yeah,
What's your
I'm a
position?
division rep for the APA.
Okay, that's cool. How did that happen?
I'm not even sure. The league owner called me. He says, "Hey, you got voted in as a division rep." I'm like, I didn't know I was into the running.
Yeah, right.
They're like, well, apparently everybody recommended you and voted on you, so I didn't even know I was up for the gig. But
yeah, that's cool. So, and they kind of like helped you out with the Vegas trip a little bit too, right? Pretty kick-ass hotel.
oh yeah, they put me up in a suite and yeah, if you win, you get hotel and airfare paid for.
That's so cool.
But
so how many days were you out there for this most recent time?
6 days.
6 days, and
which is too much time in Vegas. I'll be honest with you.
yeah, I'm sure it is. How were you playing every day or?
We play out of the 6 days. I mean, that includes the travel days.
Yeah.
So, but the 4 days, the day I didn't fly in and fly out, yeah, I played all 4 days.
That's cool. That's a lot of pool.
Yeah.
Are you kind of pooled out now, or are you still?
I got back. We had leagues. I got back Monday, and the summer session started up on Monday.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, on Tuesday.
Gotcha.
So I played Tuesday, and then we had leagues last night, Thursday.
Yeah.
And then we got tournaments. I play about 4 or 5 nights a week.
Okay. All separate leagues or separate teams?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then when you were playing, like, before I was born, were you on any leagues back then? Were you?
Yeah, it wasn't APA.
Okay.
It was a division called A&H.
Okay.
They ran all the dart leagues and pool leagues in this area.
Are they still going? I don't think I've heard of that.
They're a vending company now. I think
Oh.
they mostly just do vending machines, but they used to run all the dart leagues and pool leagues. But
Oh, cool.
they don't do that anymore. They sold that off, and APA runs it all now.
Huh. Yeah, I know. I've heard of, like, what is it, BCA? Is that?
BCA, yep, that's another.
Yeah, there's a few of them, aren't there?
Well, there's APA also has CPA, which is APA is American Pool Player Association, and CPA is Canadian Pool Players Association.
Okay.
A lot of Canadians. It's the world's biggest tournament out in Vegas that I go to.
That's cool.
The first year I went, there was 14,000 players.
Wow.
So
So the APA is kind of dominating the pool scene.
yeah,
Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I know. I feel like a lot of people, are iffy about the rules of APA. They're kind of a little bit lighter, just for like argument reasons, right?
some people think it's kind of sloppy pool, but it's to keep the pace of the game up. You know?
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that was like. I mean, we've played a lot of golf too. I know that was a big thing. They had the whole like tee it forward thing, and
right.
Just trying to keep pace of play up because got to make that money, move that forward.
Right.
So I remember stories back when you tell me about like when you were playing pool before I was born. Just you've broken some sticks, haven't you?
Just one.
Oh, okay. How would I can't imagine that. I mean, the money that these sticks cost nowadays, like, how did that happen?
Probably a little bit of beer involved, and just shooting bad one night and just slammed it on the table a little too hard and it cracked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was like a broke over the knee.
No. I just banged it on the table. And
Oh, okay. Wait, so it's like
I don't have anger management issues, but I was pissed that night.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, did you finish the match at least? Did you have another stick to play with?
I know I had to use a bar stick.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah, that sounds like a rough one. Were you doing like any like work for any leagues like that back then? I thought
no.
Oh no. Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so you were just in it for.
Yep.
And I remember seeing like growing up, you had some pool trophies and stuff too from back then.
Yep.
So you were pretty good back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I was okay. I mean, keep in mind this is all amateur level stuff.
Right.
You know, we're not talking professional.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, but for the most part, you're pretty much good at just about everything you do, aren't you?
Like you.
Thank you. Yeah, and especially motocross. I mean, you were beating pros.
Yeah.
That's cool. So how did you get into riding in the first place? I mean,
one, if you don't mind, Brody,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
me asking you a quick question back to pool real quick. I do have a sponsor. If I can give a shout
oh,
out to
please, yeah, go ahead.
Darren Hill and Kurt Jennison with Axis Qs. You can look them up online. They
Yeah.
take care of me and built me a couple of custom Qs.
Yeah, your cue stick is beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and what is it made out of?
It's Bacote wood. It's called. It's imported from South America.
Okay,
And the leather wrap is from. He imported that from Italy.
that's
So
yeah, it's stunning. I mean, before that one, you had that. It was like a McDermott's. What was it?
a McDermott GS something. I forget the model number, but it was a pretty nice McDermott.
Yeah, and it's like the wood with the clear coat, and it had like wolves etched into it. It was that was a beautiful stick. And then when you told me you'd sold that thing, and I was like, what could you possibly replace that thing with? Because that was the coolest stick I've ever seen. And then I saw your new one. I'm like, okay, I get it now.
I sold it to one of my teammates,
Yeah.
and by mistake, I always grab it because I shot with it for a few years,
Yeah.
So I'm like, he's like, you got my stick. I'm like, darn it, the habit of grabbing it.
Yeah, the last couple matches I played with you, I saw him shooting with it. Now it was like throwing me off. I kept looking. I'm like, oh yeah, that's his now. It is weird, but both sticks are beautiful. But yeah, your new one is amazing. So yeah, motocross though. How you want to? I mean, I know how I got into it from you. You kind of slapped me on it when I was 3, but I don't, because I mean, knowing Grandpa, he's not gonna put you on a motorcycle.
No.
So how did that happen?
It happened by a friend of ours gave me a mini bike when I was a little kid, just one of those little Sears red mini bikes.
Yeah.
And rode it around, and I loved riding it, and one year, I think I was 11 or 12 years old, my parents bought me a motorcycle for Christmas.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
It was a 70-something. I'm aging myself here, but it was a 70-something Yamaha GT80.
That's cool.
And I beat the hell out of it.
Oh, yeah.
I started getting pretty good. Again, I'm not patting myself on the back.
And
but
it's not like you were riding around in a neighborhood either, right? Like you had
500 acres to ride on.
Yeah, because you had our property, and then you had what is now the conservation district.
Right, and I had permission to ride on that from the previous owners.
Yeah, so that's so cool. I mean, I walk that conservation district, and I just look at it, and I'm like, oh, that would have been so cool to have permission to ride out here. Like,
yeah, I built 3 tracks out there, and then anyway, I saved up. I worked for my dad on the farm, and I saved up enough money to buy a race bike. And I told him I want to start racing. I think I was 12 or 13.
Yeah.
And it was an 80, Kawasaki 80. And just started racing and took to it and just started doing good right off the bat.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I used to race or ride against guys out on the tracks by my house with some older guys with 250s that were racing, and I'd catch them on my 80 and
Oh, wow.
just smoke them, and they're like, "You little shit."
Yeah, that's so cool. So another thing that I've always been curious about that I never really asked how it happened, but so we had a kick-ass like professional track on our property, but I can't see Grandpa like approving of that. How did you get that to happen? And especially with the people on the property too.
I'm not sure. I had the shop that I started, where the small shop is on the farm.
Yep.
And I built the track. It was my own personal practice track. And then a couple buddies started riding, and word got out. Everybody's always looking for a place to ride.
Yeah.
And I just asked them, "Hey, can I let people ride out here?" I had a lawyer draw up a waiver, and made money off of it. And
Yeah.
so he allowed it. I'm actually to your point, shocked myself that he allowed it.
Yeah. That was one thing that I mean, like, knowing him, I can't imagine. And I know that, like, you and Uncle Buck have mentioned too that he's kind of mellowed out over the years, but like back then especially, like, I just can't imagine that being okay, especially.
And I'm glad he did, because I've met some of the most, and this goes back to pool too.
Yeah.
Pool and motocross. I've met some of the most wonderful people and friends.
Yeah.
In my life.
Yeah.
You know?
It's awesome. So now, not just the racing, but, you know, the biggest thing, probably what most people know you by, SF Performance. How did that start?
It started by, I started snowmobiling, and I bought a used snowmobile, and I joined what was back then the Crystal Lake Snow Tiger Snowmobile Club. Mm-hmm. And we'd go riding together. We'd go up on trips up north together, Wisconsin and Michigan.
Yeah.
And at one of the meetings, there was a guy. He was actually a McHenry County sheriff. His name was Bob. He's like, I can't find a good mechanic. I used to be a service manager at a Kawasaki shop prior to that, so I had all my tools. And he's like, I can't find a good mechanic to work on my snowmobile. I'm like, I can take care of it, Bob. And so I took care of sled, and the word spread, and next thing you know, I got 30, 40 snowmobiles sitting in my driveway waiting in line to get fixed. And I'm like, I got to get some business cards here, you know?
Yeah.
And it turned into a side gig. I'd go to work on the farm at 6 in the morning, and I'd work till 1 or 2 at night.
Wow. Fixing
snowmobiles.
Yeah.
And then it morphed into, I started riding again, and then started the shop.
Yeah, just morphed into dirt bikes after winter.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. Yeah, and another thing too is like Grandpa being okay with the snowmobiles. You were having to move those in and out of the barn, right?
Yep.
For the work. Right?
Yep.
That's so crazy. You had like no sleep.
No. It's funny. I met this girl. I'm not going to drop any names. But recently, and she rides on the street. She's got a Harley. Mm-hmm. And she's like, you got to get a Harley and ride. I'm like, I've never had a desire to ride on the street.
Yeah, which is crazy though. Just being around like the whole like motorcycle scene, you know.
But she's like, you need to get a Harley, and I'm like, I'm not getting one. I said I raced dirt bikes, and I didn't know she lived in this area her whole life.
Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, I raced motorcycles my whole life, but I have no desire to ride on the street. She's like, oh, I know all about you. Everybody knows about you in this area.
Oh, yeah.
It was pretty funny.
That's funny.
Kind of flattering.
Yeah, definitely. No,
it was funny.
Growing up, even all your buddies, they would always tell me just dirt's a lot softer than asphalt. And especially
it's a lot softer than cars and deer.
Yeah, that too. And also just on a motorcycle, you're fully geared up with, you got your chest protector, helmet, neck brace most of the time, kidney belt, boots, knee pads, all fully geared up. And then on the street, most people don't even wear a helmet, but you'd be lucky just to have that. So again, it's like faster, harder surfaces, and less protection. So.
Yeah. If I get in an accident, I want to be in my car and not on a bike.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely something that I think is cool, and I wouldn't be opposed to it if an opportunity arose, but yeah, just growing up.
It would be fun. It's just the danger part.
And then the location too. Around big cities, no thanks, but if you lived out in like some country roads and it was just no traffic, no cars, and you could just cruise, that would be a lot more fun and less hazardous.
Yeah. Somewhat.
Yeah.
You, like I said, you have the wildlife.
Deer. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's true. And potholes and stuff, train tracks.
I've seen just this fall, within a mile of my house, obviously where I live, where you lived,
yep.
The school you went to, from the school down to the bridge,
yep,
which is 2 miles maybe.
Yeah.
9 deer this fall. Dead.
Yeah.
along the road, So I'm
Yeah.
like, so somebody hit him.
Yeah.
I want to be in a car if I hit a deer, not on a bike.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially after the amount of impacts you've had. I mean, you've had some pretty bad wad ups in your day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My body's paying for it now.
I'm sure it is. But I wanna come back to this topic, but before we get too far ahead, I want to bring up. You mentioned working at a Kawasaki dealer previously, and you were young then too, weren't you? You were like,
I think I started there when I was 16 or 17.
I remember a story you telling me about where, one like the manager was giving you a hard time or something, and the boss. You remember the story?
Yeah.
And like, you want to tell me about this? With the customers too, and the communication back and forth.
Yeah. Well, I was a young kid, obviously, and I got a job there behind the parts counter, but I was racing and I fixed my own bikes. I had my own tools. I rebuilt engines. And when I got a job there, I asked the owner if I could work on my bike at the shop because I had the parts tank or the solvent tank and, a few extra things, lifts and stuff like
Some
that.
material stuff, and maintenance stuff.
And they said, yeah, sure, you can work it. So I was back there tearing my motor apart and rebuild my motor when I'm like 16 years old. And he's like, I didn't know you knew how to do that. I'm like, I've been doing it since I was like 13.
Yeah.
And he's like, you shouldn't be behind the parts counter. You need to be behind the service desk.
Yeah.
So they hired me on as a mechanic, and the service manager, for whatever reason, didn't like me. I think mainly threatened.
Yeah. Yep.
And the owners pulled me into the office one night, and they're like, I thought I was in trouble.
Yeah.
The service manager's name was Joe. And they're like, Joe comes up and complains about you all the time. I'm like, what'd I do? They're like, nothing. We're going to fire him. Think you can handle the service manager job? And I'm like, 17 years old maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think so.
Yeah.
They just threw me right into it.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, excuse me. And then, customers would come in with, expensive street bikes.
Oh, yeah.
And be like, wanting to talk to the mechanic or the service manager. So they'd be talking to me, but they wouldn't answer me. And they would talk to the owner. His name was Vern. And Vern would refer the question to me while we're all three standing there. He's like, I don't know, Steve, what do you think? Well, so it was funny.
This is like
the gentlemen that had the expensive bikes weren't comfortable talking with a young kid.
Yeah. So they just talk to the boss, and then the boss would just turn and look at you.
Yes.
And then you'd answer, and then he would repeat it.
Yes.
That's so funny. You're like a little like Tony Stark, just like a genius. It's such a young age pulling things apart. I mean, I remember you telling me that. I mean, you've always been fascinated with just ripping stuff apart, haven't you? And it's not the taking things apart that's hard; it's the putting it back together, right?
Neither one's been a problem. I kind of have. I know in one of your episodes you talked about photographic memories. I do have a photographic memory.
Okay.
If I take a motor apart, or anything apart, sometimes we have to wait, sometimes months for parts to come in if they're back ordered.
Yeah.
And I could put it back together. I don't need a manual. I don't need a diagram. If I took it apart, I remember where every shim, washer, pin, whatever goes.
Yeah.
But I've had people bring me motors in that they try to do themselves, and they bring it in boxes.
Yeah.
That's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Because now you got to look at the diagrams.
Yep.
But if I take it apart,
Yep.
like I say, you call it photographic memory, whatever.
Yeah.
If I took it apart, I know how it goes back together.
Yeah. I remember wouldn't you kind of upcharge or something for people that brought them in?
Yep.
Already apart?
Yep.
Yeah, because that's a pain in the ass, because now you got to...
They think it's cheaper because they took it apart.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Yeah.
It's much more time.
Yeah, definitely. And then same with muddy bikes too, right? You upcharge for that. That's a pain in the ass trying to... especially muddy bikes when you're ripping apart a motor and then you get all that dirt possibly in the motor too.
Well, it's just it's the time of taking it out back and pressure washing it. You have another half hour into cleaning it.
Yeah.
Good enough that you can work on it.
Yeah, right. That's a pain in the butt. I remember you telling me too, like on the farm, you'd take things apart. You just fascinated with taking things apart, and Grandpa just getting frustrated with you. Right?
Oh yeah, he'd get pissed at me all the time. There was a dump behind my house back across the power lines from where we lived, and there was like washing machines and lawnmowers and car engines.
That's so cool.
And I'd haul it back to the farm and just take it apart. And my father was always like, "What the hell is wrong with you? Why do you got to take everything apart?" And he had the term, "Why do you got to see what makes everything tick?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Because it probably shouldn't tick."
Yeah, right. Trying to fix everything, Dad.
So I don't know. I was always fascinated by mechanical stuff and seeing how things worked.
Yeah, that's so weird. Because I mean, was there any like previous Frye that had interest in, mechanical things? Because I mean, it's just been farmers down the line, pretty much, right?
Yeah, not that I can think of. My grandfathers or any of my uncles.
It's not
Actually, my uncle on your grandma's, my mom's brother. Mm-hmm. He was a maintenance guy at O'Hare Airport. So,
oh, really?
So he's got mechanical background.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that, but still, like, kind of came out of nowhere. This interest and fascination with taking things apart and putting them back together.
I don't know where it came from. It was just always something that intrigued me.
Yeah, that's so crazy.
It's funny, in high school, I took power mechanics. Power 1 was, small engines, and then Power 2 was car engines.
Yeah.
And we had an odd number of students in the class.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Who wants to work alone?" And I was the first one to put my hand out. And I got my motor done before anybody. And obviously got an A in the class.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
It didn't hurt that the power mechanics teacher used to hunt out on our farm.
Oh,
we'd let him hunt. So.
That's fun. Yeah,
maybe that. So it gave me an A+.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, but it's crazy too, because like you usually get like those athletic types and then like the genius types. But like what's fascinating is that you had both. You were, you have this intelligence and this ability to just fix things, and then you also had the athletic capabilities where you were just kicking ass on a bike. You could build it and then teach people how to use it.
I appreciate you're making me blush here. I went to a race one time down, and it was a state championship race. It was a 2-day event, and it was in Casey.
Yep.
You raced at Casey. Mm-hmm. And I went down there, and the first day, my motor grenaded, blew a crank.
Oh.
And I'm like, damn, I still got to get some points. I got to race the second day.
Yep.
So I asked around, are there any Kawasaki shops in the area? They're like, yeah, there's one about a half hour from here. I went down there. I'm like, can you guys do this motor tonight?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. I'm like, do you have the parts? They had all the parts, the bearings and a rod kit and everything.
Yeah.
And I asked the owner and the service manager, can I use your shop for a few hours?
Yeah.
And they let me.
That's cool.
So I rebuilt the motor at their shop, and they were blown away.
Yeah.
Again, I was like 17 years old.
Yeah, and they're like, "You want a job?"
Yep, they offered me a job. I'm like 5 hours away from here. I'm like, no, it's a little too far for me.
Yeah.
I said, but give me some stickers, and I'll throw them on my bike for you because I'm racing tomorrow. So I went back and did good the next day. But
that's so cool.
That's one of my favorite motocross stories.
That is so cool. Yeah, that's a great story. Let's take a little break because Bailey's whining. I'm gonna let her out quick.
Okay.
Okay, we are back. So we did kind of put a tab in a conversation previously about the crashes. I know you had some pretty bad accidents growing up, and then even I guess you could call it a career-ending crash. So you wanna take me back and kind of go through the timeline of some of your most memorable wad ups.
Most memorable? Probably one almost comedic one is it was on my first bike, my 80, when I was a teenager, young teenager. My father never was into it. He wouldn't come to the races.
Oh, yeah.
Finally talked him into coming and watch me race one time, and the first moto on the start, I went down and separated my shoulder. And he walks up to me, and I'm laying on the ground, and the paramedics are there. And he walks up to me, and he's like, "You're not going to win any fucking trophies laying there on the ground." I'm like, "Yeah, probably not, but I'm in a lot of pain."
Oh, my God. That's so funny. Yeah, he's always... Grandpa's a tough motherfucker.
Yeah. And then at the same track, it was Maplehurst, which is up in Wilmot. I went down really bad and took a handlebar in the mouth and ripped my lip off my chin and knocked a bunch of teeth out. It was ugly. I was unconscious. I woke up in the ambulance. They took me to one hospital, and they're like, "We can't handle this here." They had to load me back up and take me to another hospital.
Wow. Yeah.
And my mom passed out.
Just from looking at you?
Yeah. And my aunt and my grandmother came in the room and just started bawling.
Wow.
I'm like, and they wouldn't let me see it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this can't be good.
Yeah.
You know, they kept having to roll me on my side to drain the blood out of my mouth.
Oh, just pour it out of your face.
Yeah,
hole.
pretty much pour it out of my face hole. Yeah, it was pretty ugly.
Wow.
But anyway, it was a Sunday, and my dad was home watching football, as he always is.
Yep.
But they called him, and he came out, and he same thing, Mr. Calm.
Yep.
He's like, "Oh, for Christ's sake, you made it sound like half his head was torn off. He'll be fine."
Which it basically was.
Well, 70 stitches in an hour and a half worth of plastic surgery
Really?
later. Oh, yeah.
70 stitches?
Yeah.
Wow. And how, in plastic surgery? Jeez. How?
Yeah, well, I was laying there, and they're like, "Do you have your own plastic surgeon, or should we call one in?" I'm like, who the hell has their own plastic surgeon on me?
Yeah, let me just... I got him on speed dial here.
Yeah, right. But, yeah, then several broken bones. My left shoulder snapped and broken ribs and...
Teeth, too. How many teeth are fake?
Well, I had 5 root canals from that handlebar thing in the mouth.
Yeah.
And I've got 1 cap and then 2 fake
Okay, wow.
on the bottom, so...
How... You want to, you remember how that crash went down? You want to walk us through that? What were you thinking, and what happened? How did it happen?
It was a whoop section in the back, and it was a muddy race, and I just came into him too hot and went over the bars. It was my own handlebar that hit me in the mouth.
Yeah.
And I just remember coming into the whoop section and waking up in the ambulance.
That's so... I feel like it's always the stupid little ones that cause the most damage.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Jeez. Wasn't there a story, didn't you break a rib on one of the pit bikes just dicking around?
Yes.
How did that happen? Was that on the 60-footer? I feel like I remember.
No, me and your mother were going out to dinner, and we heard somebody out riding on the track that didn't have permission.
Okay.
So I jumped on my pit bike to run out there to chase them off and tell them get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
Which I did.
Yep.
And then there was this tiny little dog, and I had nice clothes on. We were going out to dinner.
Ready to go out to dinner.
And there's this little double jump, and I'm like, I'll just hit it out of the way.
Yeah.
And I came up short on it and took the handlebar and the ribs, and I'm like, yeah, broke 2 ribs there.
So no dinner that night?
No, I went out.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
And then you were like...
I can't breathe.
Oh, dang. So were you just eating and your stomach's filling and you're like, this is hurting?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, my God. That's crazy. You get those tough genes from Grandpa, I guess.
And I go to the hospital and x-ray, and yeah, you cracked 2 ribs.
Wow.
I'm like, oh.
Wow, I can't believe that wasn't more painful or noticeable.
It was painful, trust me.
Yeah. Wow, dang. I don't remember if there's any other big ones, but I do remember the last crash you had. Was there any big ones in
Well,
between?
at Maplehurst again, I went down one time and broke my wrist in 3 places. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was not fun.
Yeah.
And then at Redbud, I dislocated my left elbow.
Wow. Ugh.
That was painful. And then
How did that happen?
I was qualifying for a pro national, actually. Mm-hmm. And a guy in front of me, I was like in 6th place, and you just needed to get like top 12 to qualify. So I was in qualifying.
Well in there,
yeah. And this idiot in front of me, I shouldn't call him an idiot. He cross-rutted and went off the track, hit a tree, and his bike ricocheted off the tree and cleaned me out. And my arm got stuck through the handlebar and dislocated my left shoulder or my left elbow.
Wow.
So that was the end of that weekend.
What year was that?
85 or 86.
Dang. Wow.
Again, dating myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I know you were like freaking kicking ass, beating pros. How come you never what was it? Why didn't you get your pro card?
Mainly because of the working at the farm.
Okay.
I was making pretty decent money.
Yeah.
And again, not to pat myself on the back, I was an okay rider, but I wasn't fast enough to like get a factory ride or anything like that, or even it'd be like, if I could put it in perspective to your listeners, being a really good golfer,
Yeah.
like you are, but are you going to make it on the PGA Tour and make money?
No.
Probably not. Would you maybe qualify to get into an event?
Yeah.
Maybe. Are you going to make the weekend and make money? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it's like, am I going to take the time and spend the money to
Yeah.
travel around the whole country? New York, Florida, California, Seattle, Texas.
Yep.
That's basically what it came down to.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite at that level.
Yeah, the cost didn't make up for the opportunity cost.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why.
And that's one thing that I've always felt like sucks with the sport. Just doesn't have enough money in it, because it's such a cool sport. But yeah, I just I've always loved the sport, but the money is just kind of
It's the same. It's similar with pool.
yeah.
It's like, am I going to travel around and chase a dream of being a professional pool player?
Yeah.
It just, no.
Yeah, it's like the top 10, maybe 15 guys make a career out of it, and that's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I played amateur level, pretty high amateur level stuff, and
Just enjoy it.
get paid to go to Vegas and have fun and hang out with some cool people. So, yeah, similar kind of scenario.
Yeah. No, that's all you got to do is just enjoy it for what it is, I guess. I mean, yeah, so then it wasn't just like the end of like the motocross then when you kind of decided that you didn't or weren't going to go professional. So SF Performance, you started, how did that go from like a small town kind of, fixer upper repair shop to a professional race team?
Well, that's a tough one to answer. I don't know. It just kind of naturally grew. And
even being like that small repair shop, you still had pros coming out and practicing on our track.
yeah, Team Suzuki brought their rig out to test on our track, and Team Honda came out with Bob Hanna, and I rode with him.
Yeah.
For any of you that know who that might be.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It just grew, and it naturally got big.
Yeah.
I can't narrow down an instance or a
Yeah.
certain thing that I did
Word
or
spread. You just grew
word spread and
So you went from was
kind
that
of like the APA thing when they voted me in.
Yeah.
Because I'm a likable guy, apparently.
Yeah, you were just kind of
It's the same in the motocross
Found
world, I
yourself
think.
there.
Yeah, it's just, I have a lot of good friends, and they came to my shop, and I started sponsoring people, helping them out.
yeah.
And, yeah, like you mentioned in one of your episodes, I don't remember about, we had the biggest,
Yeah.
we had I think 5 pros on the line at Redbud.
That's so cool.
And, yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah. That you want to mention their names?
I think it was Cameron Lansing, Derek Whitney, Kevin Marquardt. Who were the other two? I'm drawing a blank.
Did you say Derek already?
Derek Whitney.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know if you got that one.
Yeah. There was 5. I know there were 5. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, Jimmy Pavoni
Yes. Yeah. I remember.
and somebody else I'm forgetting. I apologize if they're listening.
Now another, big name, probably the biggest name in motocross right now, Chase Sexton. You did some work for him, right? Did you sponsor?
Yeah, I sponsored him. Bought him a bike.
Wow.
Bought him bikes for 3 years.
Oh, really? I didn't know it was that big of a thing.
Yeah.
Wow. And look at him now. It
Yeah.
all started on Lems, didn't it?
Yep. Matter of fact, funny you just said that because that's what his dad told me not long ago. He's like, all started on the Lems.
That's so cool.
He invited us down to the Honda compound in Orlando
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, we got to go. That'd be
to
awesome.
watch him train.
That'd be so cool. Yeah, he's kicking ass. I remember riding with him on the kiddie track.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, we had 2 tracks. We had a big track and then a kiddie track, and the kiddie track was basically anybody under a 125. And then, after the day of riding, at the end of the day, as the sun's kind of setting, me and some of my close buddies would hop out on the big track while it's empty and be able to play around on that. But the kiddie track was just kind of to keep the kids off the big track for
Beginners,
Yeah.
50s and 65s and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Because
that track was still a really kick-ass track.
I like the whoops along the fence in the back.
They were
Those
the
are
best.
fun.
Yeah, I love those things. They're so much fun. But I remember racing Chase on the kiddie track, and I held him off for it was just lap after lap. And I remember just thinking, is this guy ever gonna I couldn't let him beat me on my own track. So I remember holding him off until you guys pulled us off the track. Okay, they're gonna keep going. We gotta stop them.
And now he's one of the top pros in the world.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he was on my ass too. I mean, it was like every corner I'm seeing his front tire. But yeah, that was the good old days. It was so much fun just riding. I mean, it's like I'm so grateful to be able to have grown up there and just have that freedom and be able to ride like that. I mean, thank you for.
Well, that's due to your grandfather, not me.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked on the farm, so me and your uncle, we put a lot of work into that farm. So
Yep.
a little tiny bit to do with, but it's mainly your grandfather.
Yeah. It's I'm very grateful for him as well. He's a hard worker. I mean, he dedicated his whole life. So another question that I have is the race team. From that, I mean, I know a lot of it had to do with the economy, but how did that? What made you stop with SF?
Oh, it was 100% the economy, and when the 08,
Yep.
09
Yep.
recession hit.
Yeah.
Motorcycles and motorcycle racing is not a necessity.
Yep.
Food and rent is.
Yeah.
So our sales dropped off 50%.
Oh wow.
At the shop, and the bills didn't drop off.
Yeah, right.
The power company and all that, and
Yeah.
the landlord, they don't give you a break. But when it got to the point where we were just throwing good money after bad, and
Yeah.
and just decided to close it up, and and I went back to work at the farm.
Yeah, yeah, because at the time the farm was doing really well, right?
Yeah, the farm was killing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So it was kind of a no-brainer.
yeah. I mean, struggling there, but that shop was. I mean, you were a dealer for like the biggest companies in the world in motocross. What? Weren't you the biggest dealer for
We were the biggest M2R dealer.
in the country or the world?
I don't think the world. I think the country. We were top 40 for Fox.
Oh wow!
I'm sure many of you know the
Oh,
Fox
yeah.
logo, Fox
Everybody.
clothing. So we were top 40 in the country for Fox. And yeah, it was a pretty rocking shop for a while.
Yeah, and
It had a pretty good run, 20 some years, but like I said, 08, 09 hit, and
yeah,
just started losing money, and I'm like, I'm not giving it all back, and
yeah,
like you said, the farm was doing good, and
yep.
I'm just gonna go back to work for the farm.
Yeah, that's. I mean, so many people, so many of my friends keep even talk today, like still say how we got to bring it back. We got to bring it back, and even the track.
I
too.
get it all the time too.
Yeah, yeah. It's. I mean, because there's really nowhere to ride, so it's like people talk about just having a place to ride as well too. I mean, that.
And there's no shops really that just specialize in moto.
Right. Yeah. It's all like Kawasaki dealers or whatever.
Right.
You know, so it's like they do everything. Yeah. No. I mean, I think that's what did it. That 08 or whatever, that area just kind of killed off all the small shops.
Yeah.
All the good ones.
Yeah.
That's a shame. Cause,
Hey, we had a pretty good run,
Yeah.
you know, and like I said earlier, met so many awesome people, and I have no regrets. Even with all my beat up body parts
Yeah.
that I still ache every morning I wake up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah. No, it was such a cool way to live. An awesome way to grow up. Do you want to tell us about when you stopped riding, that accident?
Oh, I was in my 40s, and I
Yeah.
went over the bars, and I thought my back was broken.
Yep.
I couldn't stand up. My legs were numb, and went to the hospital, and they x-rayed me and said it was just a bruise, a swollen, I don't know, some kind of swelling putting pressure on my spine, but nothing was broken.
Okay. Yeah.
So it went away
Yeah.
after the swelling. You know, I basically was in bed for a couple weeks,
Yeah.
and I just got to the point where I'm like, I've been beat up enough. I'm done.
Yep.
And you know that, and I don't want to get into any details about this, but we both lost a couple of friends
Yep. Yeah.
and a couple other friends that I know that were paralyzed from riding. It's a very dangerous sport.
Such young people too.
Yeah. One was 10 years old.
Yep. Yep.
And
The other 21.
yeah, 2 weeks before his 21st birthday. Neighbor.
Yep.
And after I hurt my back, I just said, screw this.
Yep.
I'm done. As much as I love the sport, and I have no
Yeah.
regrets,
Yeah.
but, you know, it got to the point where I'm done.
It's rough. Yeah. Especially, 40 still.
I mean, Tom Brady retired when he was 40s.
Yeah.
I was 45 years old, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the most physically demanding sport there is, motocross.
Yep.
Like you got football players, yeah, they have hard impacts, but you're hitting other humans that give. The earth doesn't give when you go down. It's a crazy sport. But as far as that accident goes, it was on a corner, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was a tall corner, right?
Yeah.
Like it was right before the sand whoops, a big sand corner, right? How tall was that berm?
It's probably 12 feet.
Yeah, and you were right at the top of it, right?
Yeah. And it was dry. It was
Yeah.
rock hard ground. And I went over the bars. It was probably 15 feet in the air. And landed on my back,
Yeah.
which isn't fun to do.
No. Yeah, especially on like dry, rock hard ground like that, that was, yeah, that's probably the biggest berm on the track. That was a rough way to crash. I mean, we had some other accidents on the track too. I mean, there was a flight for life out of there, wasn't there?
Yeah.
That was a rough one too. That was the spectator table, right?
Yep.
Right after that. And
Rob McMillan.
how'd that happen? What was he just
He came up short and feet came off the pegs, and when he came back, he grabbed the throttle and just went right into the woods.
Yeah.
And hit a tree.
Yeah, I remember seeing that tree. That tree is still scarred.
Yeah.
What
Yeah, he broke his hip.
that has to be painful.
Yeah.
I remember just hearing the screams
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to pull him out of the trees. Speaking of pulling out of trees, I remember a time when I
I know where you're going.
I forgot
Dipshit.
forgot where I was. Actually, you want to tell the story? You probably have a better memory.
There was this long whoop section at the end of it. It was a big berm at the end of the swoop section that went to the right, and he thought it was he was young. You were on your 50, I think,
still.
still.
My 50, yeah.
And he thought it was a jump. Just forgot where he was at on the track, and he gets to the end of the whoops and he just hammers on it, goes flying into the trees, and his bike is stuck up in the trees. Luckily, you didn't break any bones.
Yeah, and that's a crazy thing too. Is racing. When I was racing, I never broke any bones when I was racing. I had some bad wad ups and some scars, but never broke a bone from racing. I don't know. I know a lot of kids. That was one thing too. Is like you would push me, but not past my limits. You knew what I was capable of, and you'd push me to what I was capable of. But
I listened to your one episode about getting pushed too hard, and I almost felt bad.
No, yeah. I mean, well, it was just, I didn't mean it as like you're sitting there leaning over the fence like some parents screaming at their kids. Like, not those parents are crazy, but like what I was referring to is more of the pressures of who you were and what you were doing with SF Performance, and it was like the weight of I have to be good, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, I've always looked up to you, and you're.
I appreciate that. I look up to you.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, your opinion it means so much to me. So I always wanted to make you proud, and
you're a better young man than I ever was. So I love you and I appreciate you, but I pushed you a little bit, but only because I'm very competitive, and I knew how much talent you had. I know you don't speak of it too much, but what were you, like a 5 or 6 handicap?
Yeah.
In golf,
yeah.
I'm speaking.
5.6, yeah.
Yeah. He was a good golfer. He was a good motocross rider. He's good at everything he does. He's very athletic and very talented.
Thank you.
And I'm very proud of him. And he's one of the most personable guys you'll ever meet.
Thanks, Dad. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and the golf, I didn't even start that until the summer between 8th grade, middle school, and high school. And then didn't even make the cut on freshman year for the golf team. And then
it was after I hurt my back.
Yeah.
And about a year later, I let my back heal. And when we decided to quit racing,
Yep.
we went, hey, let's go golf.
Yep. Yeah.
And
yeah, because Grandpa was a great golfer. He's got a record at Crystal Lake Country Club, doesn't he?
yeah, 19 putts in a round.
That's insane. Yeah, and
You almost went to golf college. We drove
Yeah.
around. We drove to North
Yep.
Carolina and Florida looking for a golf college for you to go to.
yeah, that's so. A lot of people think like, how could you go from racing motocross to playing golf? Like, it seems like such complete opposites. But the way I see it is, they are both mental games, and what I like is that I don't have to rely on other people not playing 100% when I am. It's whether the outcome of the game is good or bad, it was 100% on me. And
I'm the same way. You got that from me. My mother, when I was a young kid, signed me up for like Pee Wee baseball.
yeah,
And I didn't like it. I never got into team sports.
yeah.
And, I mean, I love
Yeah,
watching.
yeah.
I love watching football.
Yep.
For the record, I'm a Packer fan.
Yep.
But I never enjoyed playing team sports for that exact reason. It's, I want it to be on me.
Yeah.
And it's the same with pool.
Yep. Yeah.
Motocross,
Yep.
golf. It's you.
Yeah. And they're all super mental games too.
Yeah.
It keeps our minds active. We both have super active, crazy minds.
Yeah, oh yeah. That's why we both have insomnia so bad.
Yeah.
I lay up awake at night all night long, just crap going through my brain.
Yeah. You ever just think about it being a curse?
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah. I that's crossed my mind before too. It's just like maybe it is a curse. Maybe it's just bliss living in, naivety. Like, I guess.
It runs in the family though. Your uncle, my brother, and your grandfather on my side, my dad, have the same thing. Insomnia, really bad.
Oh, really?
Couple hours a night.
Yep.
It's all we can sleep.
Yeah.
And your mind's just racing, and
Yep.
you just can't shut it off.
Yeah.
It is a curse. It's annoying.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people are like, oh, I crash at 8 o'clock and I wake up at 8 o'clock. I'm like, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah. Not a care. I guess it's easy to fall asleep when there's nothing happening in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always thinking about something.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably why you're so good at putting things together and fixing things.
Thank you.
Yeah. One thing I did want to kind of, changing the subject here, I'm going to cut back, but on one of the previous episodes with Jeremy Lesser, his first episode, because he's been on twice, we talked about this site, like this, like weird ghost sighting, whatever you want to call it, in the woods, and we both saw it. I saw it, and it was like this misty kind of figure that I saw out of the corner of my eye, and I looked over at Jeremy, and he's looking over that way, and then he looks back at me, and I was like, "Did you see that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw that." And then it was weird that we both saw it, and it was gone. And so then after that podcast, after I released that, I had a listener that that mentioned, why don't you ask your dad about the story about the guy that they said died on our property. And so I asked you about that, and you want to kind of fill us in? Because I feel like this kind of like answered some questions, because it was...
Technically, it wasn't on our property. Our property backs up to ComEd power lines. And under the power lines, which are not on our property, guys used to go out and take their trucks, Jeeps, whatever, off-roading, and they knocked this gate down, and ComEd put this cable up, but they had it all flagged off. But after years, the flags like dried up and fell off, and there was two guys there riding double on a dirt bike, ripping down under the power lines, and didn't see the cable. And the one kid got, sorry to be graphic, got decapitated.
Yeah.
The passenger in the back, he was fine, and I went to grade school with the kid that died. His brother was in my class.
Wow. Yeah, that's
it was tragic.
So tragic. Yeah, that's terrible. And
I made a mistake of walking out there, and it wasn't a pretty sight.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure with the ambulance noise and stuff, you could hear that all day.
Yeah, it was. So
you just walked out there because you're curious, and
yeah, just to see what was going on.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, we don't need to go further. That's terrible, especially how young you were to see that. Right? How old were you?
I was probably 14.
Wow.
14 or 15, right in that range.
Yep. So then I asked you where, like, specifically this happened.
No, maybe younger than that, probably, because I was at Prairie Grove, so I was in grade school, so I was maybe 12, 13.
Yeah.
It's before high school.
That's crazy. Yeah, so in that episode number 7, we talked about a specific location, and it was backed up to the ComEd property because the hill kind of like crests over, and on the backside of the hill. And I asked you specifically where it happened, and you told me that spot, like right on the backside of that hill over there underneath the power lines. And that was the hill we were sitting on that side too. And I'm like, that's probably my best guess is what happened. I mean, you're a realistic kind of guy, and I've never actually asked you, your thoughts and opinions on this, but like you've always been kind of like a scientific, realistic guy. So what are your thoughts on like, people that say that they've seen ghosts and stuff like that?
I think they're just seeing stuff. I don't believe in ghosts.
Yeah, no, that's totally fine. I'm just curious because I've never asked you before. What do you've never had any experiences yourself?
No.
Yeah, nothing that you couldn't explain.
Oh, other than women? No.
yeah, right. And then as far as like the scientific thing goes too, I mean, we do talk a lot about the ghosts, and then the other thing too is with aliens. What are your thoughts on them, or a possibility of life out there?
Oh, I'm certain with all the stars and universes and everything that there's life somewhere.
Gotta be.
I don't believe that they're coming here
Visiting
and not
us.
Making contact.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of
that. It's like they're not gonna make it here and make some kind of contact.
Right. Yeah.
And the government can somehow Area 51 hide it from the rest of the world.
Right. Especially nowadays with like smartphone, everybody's got a camera in their pocket, and they can you can. So that's definitely my problem is that my mind, I find myself wanting to believe in it. So it's tough, but I like battle this where I'm like, okay, by now there should be more footage or things out, like everybody's got a phone on them. So you'd think that there'd be some good evidence.
I always make a joke to some of my friends that believe in UFOs that I'll point up in the air, you see a jet, 30-some thousand feet in the air. It's like, hey, what kind of plane is that? I don't know. I'm like, well, it's an unidentifiable flying object then.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting topic, and I always have found fascination in it. I don't know. I've always been fascinated with looking up at the stars, and I think.
Oh, I do. Astrology is really cool.
Yeah. I feel like you got to be naive to not think that, even if it's bacteria, like I've said in a previous podcast, like it doesn't have to be, intelligent life. It could just be, some sort of organism on another planet or a meteor or anything.
Yeah, absolutely, that can happen.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that was one thing I've always been curious about is, I've never asked you your thoughts on any of that.
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I focus on the stuff that matters, relationships, first and foremost, my children, you and Stephanie. And after that, my hobbies.
Yeah.
Pool and whatever.
Yep, and then you get really good at them.
Yeah, so it's like...
Yep.
An alien wants to contact me, alien can contact me. But other than that, I'm not going to worry about it.
Yeah, no, it's a good way to put it. Yeah, because by now, if they're visiting, we should have heard by now, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah, and if somebody's hiding that information from us, then whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's not affecting my life, right?
Right. It's not affecting my pool game, so what do I care?
Yeah. Yep. And speaking of pool, I know Cinco de Mayo today. I know you.
Yeah, happy May 5th.
Yeah, I'm sure you're thinking about getting back out to the bar, right? You gonna shoot some pool tonight?
Yep.
Nice. You going straight there after this?
Probably go shoot a few practice games. I'm not gonna stay out late.
Yeah.
I practice every day, so
yeah, that's why you're good. So being mindful of time, well, I mean, we're over an hour here, so that's
fine. If you have any other questions, I'm good, or whatever you want to do.
I think I'd love to have you back on the podcast. This was a really cool episode.
I loved it.
Yeah, it answered a lot of questions for me. I mean, I'm so grateful for your time and just the knowledge that you have and the experiences that you had. It's amazing. You're a very interesting person.
You're an amazing young man yourself, and
You,
I'm so proud that you're my son.
Thank you so much, Dad. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this. It answered a lot of questions, and I always just love spending time with my dad. He's, my best friend.
You are as well.
Thank you so much.
And don't forget to share this with your friends, listeners.
Yeah, definitely. Share it. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a salesperson too.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate all of you, and have a great rest of your day.
Yes.